The first thing I did when I got home every single morning was check under the loose floorboard in my bedroom. Not for monsters, not for old diaries, but for the stack of cash that represented my daughter's future. My future, our future. My name is Robin. I'm 33 years old. And for the last year, I've been living back in my childhood bedroom at my mother Esme's house, a place I swore I'd never return to after I turned 18. But life, and a particularly nasty divorce from Nathan, has a way of dragging you back to the places you least want to be, especially when your 9-year-old daughter, Naomi, needs you to be strong. Naomi, my heart, she's got this congenital heart condition, something that's been a shadow over her whole life. It's not just a murmur, it's serious and it's getting worse. For the past year, every waking moment not spent with her has been spent grinding. 3 minimum wage jobs, cashier at a 24-hour convenience store, cleaning offices after hours, and a few side hustles I won't even get into. Every single dollar, every single cent went into that envelope under the floorboard. No bank accounts, no paper trails, nothing Esme could ever get her hands on. I'd seen her work before. I'd saved $85,000 in cash for an experimental surgery that promised to fix Naomi's heart. It was risky, yeah, but it was our only real shot, and it was booked for next week, just 6 days away. I hadn't told Naomi the exact date, just that a special day was coming. I wanted to protect her from the fear, from the uncertainty, and from Esme. My mother, 62, with her perfectly coiffed hair and a smile that never quite reached her eyes, had a way of turning every hope into a weapon. She'd already sabotaged my college scholarship years ago, convinced me I was too delicate for the pressure, that I should stay home and help her. I wasn't going to let her near this. I walked in from my graveyard shift at 4:30 a.m., the stale smell of coffee and desperation still clinging to my uniform. The house was quiet, the way it always was when Esme was asleep. I tiptoed to my room, the one with the faded floral wallpaper and the twin bed that felt too small. My eyes immediately went to the corner by the closet. The floorboard. It was pried open, not neatly, not like I did it. It was splintered, jagged, my breath hitched, my stomach dropped faster than a lead weight. I knelt, my fingers trembling as I touched the raw wood. The space beneath was empty. The envelope, the thick, heavy envelope that had been my entire world for the last year, was gone. A cold dread seeped into my bones, a kind of primal fear that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. I stood up slowly, my gaze sweeping the room, as if the money might have just rolled away. But I knew exactly who had done it. I walked out of the bedroom, my steps heavy, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The kitchen light was on. Esme was sitting at the table, perfectly composed, a half-empty bottle of Chardonnay beside her. On her ears, glinting under the harsh overhead light, were a pair of diamond studs I'd never seen before. They looked expensive. Too expensive. She looked up, her lips curving into that familiar, condescending smirk. "Morning, dear," she said, her voice syrupy sweet. She took a slow sip of her wine. "Sleep well?" I stared at her, my throat tight, unable to form words. The rage was a hot, burning coal in my chest, but it was buried under a layer of shock so profound it felt like a physical blow. She gestured vaguely with her free hand, the one not holding the wine glass. "Oh, that!" "The money, you mean?" She chuckled, a dry, humourless sound. "Honestly, Robin, you were just going to blow it anyway, on some ridiculous experimental nonsense. You always were so naive." My vision blurred. I wanted to scream, to rip those earrings from her ears, to shake her until something in her cold, dead heart cracked open. But I couldn't, not yet. I just stood there, breathing hard, trying to process her casual cruelty. She'd stolen Naomi's future, my daughter's life. I stumbled back to my room, my hands shaking so badly I could barely type. I pulled out my old laptop, the one I used for work, and opened my encrypted email. I needed to confirm the surgery booking. Maybe, just maybe, she hadn't touched that. Maybe I could still salvage this. The email loaded. My eyes scanned the subject line, then the body. My blood ran cold. Your appointment for Naomi Hoffman, scheduled for date, has been successfully cancelled per your request. We understand circumstances change. Please contact us to reschedule. The timestamp was 2 hours ago. The email confirmation of the cancellation burned into my retinas. 2 hours. She'd done it 2 hours ago. My mother hadn't just stolen the money, she'd actively sabotaged Naomi's surgery. This wasn't some impulsive act of greed, this was calculated. I walked back into the kitchen, my hands balled into fists, the rage finally breaking through the shock. Esme was still there, swirling the wine in her glass, a faint smile playing on her lips. "You cancelled it," I choked out, my voice raw. "You cancelled Naomi's surgery." Her smile didn't falter. "Oh, that? Yes, I did. Honestly, Robin, it was for the best. That experimental procedure, far too risky. You're so easily swayed by these flashy doctors. A mother knows what's best for her child." "You are not my mother right now," I snarled, stepping closer to the table. "You are a thief." "You stole $85,000 from me, from Naomi, and then you called the hospital and pretended to be me. How could you? How dare you?" She set her glass down with a delicate clink. "Darling, don't be so dramatic. It wasn't stealing, it was reallocating funds. You're so irresponsible with money, always have been. Remember that college scholarship? You were going to run off to some fancy university, get yourself into debt. And for what? To be alone? I saved you from that too." The memory hit me like a physical blow. I was 17, a scholarship to a state university in my hands, a chance to escape this house, this life. Esme had convinced me it was a trap, that I was too fragile for dorm life, that I'd fail. She'd even called the admissions office, pretending I'd changed my mind, that I was having a nervous breakdown. I'd believed her then. I'd stayed. And now, at 33, I was back in the same damn bedroom. "You didn't save me," I hissed, my voice trembling with suppressed fury. "You trapped me. You've always trapped me, and now you're trying to kill my daughter." Esme scoffed, picking at a stray thread on her silk robe. "Don't be absurd. Naomi is perfectly fine. A little heart murmur, that's all. You blow everything out of proportion, just like your father, always so dramatic." She took another sip of wine, her gaze dismissive. "You'll thank me later." When you're not saddled with medical debt and a child who thinks she's dying. I turned away, unable to look at her for another second. My hands were shaking, not just from anger, but from a cold, terrifying realization. This wasn't just about the money. This was about control, about her need to dictate my life, even if it meant risking Naomi's. This was premeditated. I grabbed my phone, my fingers fumbling as I scrolled through my contacts. I needed to talk to someone at the hospital. Someone who knew the details of Naomi's case. I called the main line, navigated the automated system, and finally got through to the cardiothoracic surgery department. "I need to speak to Dr. Fowler," I said, my voice tight. "It's urgent, about Naomi Hoffman's cancelled surgery." A few moments later, a familiar voice came on the line. "Robin, is that really you?" It was Landon Fowler, my childhood friend, now a brilliant cardiothoracic surgeon, 34 years old, just a year older than me. He was the one who'd taken on Naomi's case, the one who'd given us hope. "Landon," I said, relief and panic warring in my chest. "Yeah, it's me. What happened with Naomi's surgery? I just saw the cancellation email. It said, I requested it." There was a pause on his end. "Robin, I was just about to call you. I was concerned. The person who called in sounded exactly like you. Said you were her mother, that you'd had a change of heart about the surgery, that it was unnecessary and too risky for your attention-seeking child." My blood ran cold. She called me attention-seeking. Yeah, Landon said, his voice grim. It was unusual, the way she spoke about Naomi, and she insisted on cancelling it immediately, wouldn't even consider rescheduling. Said you were incompetent to make such medical decisions. My mother, she hadn't just stolen the money. She'd slandered me, slandered Naomi, tried to paint me as an unfit mother to the very people who held my daughter's life in their hands. The theft was just the first shot. The cancellation was the real attack. This wasn't impulsive. This was a deliberate attempt to destroy everything I'd worked for, everything Naomi needed. Landon, I said, my voice barely a whisper. It was her, my mother. She stole the money I saved for the surgery, and then she called you. Another pause, longer this time. Robin, he said, his voice softening, a hint of something else in it. Concern, perhaps even anger. Look, this isn't standard procedure, but I recorded the call. I think you need to hear this. The hospital was a blur of sterile white walls and hushed voices. Landon met me in his office, a small functional room filled with medical textbooks and anatomical models. He looked tired, his usually neat hair a little rumpled, but his eyes were sharp with concern. He didn't say much, just gestured to the chair opposite his desk. Then he clicked a few times on his computer, and the room filled with the sound of a phone ringing. My breath hitched. Cardiothoracic surgery, this is Landon Fowler. Then, a voice, my mother's voice, clear as a bell, dripping with false concern. Yes, hello, I'm calling about Naomi Hoffman, Robin Hoffman's daughter. I'm her mother, Esme Hoffman. My stomach churned. Landon's recorded voice was calm, professional. Okay, Ms. Hoffman, how can I help you? Well, it's about the surgery, the one scheduled for next week. My daughter Robin, she's not quite herself lately, very emotional. She gets these ideas, you know. Thinks Naomi needs all these drastic procedures, but the child is perfectly fine. A little heart murmur, nothing serious. She doesn't need risky surgeries for attention. I flinched. The words were a knife twisting in an old wound. Attention-seeking. That was Esme's favourite accusation. Any time I wanted something, any time I had an opinion, any time I needed help, it was always because I was attention-seeking. Landon's voice still calm. Ma'am, Naomi Hoffman's condition is quite serious. Dr. Sharma, her paediatric cardiologist, has recommended this procedure as medically necessary. Oh, Dr. Sharma, Esme scoffed. He's a bit of a drama queen, isn't he? Always exaggerating. No, my daughter Robin is simply incompetent to make such medical decisions. She's too easily swayed. I'm calling to cancel the surgery, effective immediately. She won't be needing it. There was a brief pause, then Landon's voice again, a hint of steel beneath the calm. Ma'am, I understand your concerns, but we need to speak with the legal guardian, Robin Hoffman, directly to cancel a procedure of this magnitude. I am her mother, Esme snapped, her voice rising slightly. And I'm telling you, Robin is not in a fit state. She's been under a lot of stress. I'm making this decision for the good of my grandchild. Just cancel it. She's not going to show up anyway. She'll just blow the money on something else. The recording ended. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the frantic beat of my own heart. I stared at the blank screen, tears blurring my vision. It wasn't just the words, it was the tone, the absolute conviction in her voice that she was right, that she knew better, that I was a fool, an incompetent child. It was the same tone she'd used my entire life. Robin? Landon's voice was gentle. He was looking at me, his expression a mix of pity and quiet fury. I couldn't speak. The tears started to fall, hot and fast, blurring the edges of the room. I buried my face in my hands, the shame and the anger and the profound sense of betrayal washing over me in a suffocating wave. This wasn't just about money. This was about her trying to control my daughter's life, about her trying to break me. I stayed there for a long time, just breathing, trying to get my emotions under control. Landon didn't press me. He just sat there, a silent, steady presence. When I finally lifted my head, my face was streaked with tears, but something had shifted inside me. The despair was still there, but beneath it a cold, hard resolve had begun to form. "Thank you, Landon," I managed, my voice hoarse. "For recording that." He nodded. "Of course." I had a bad feeling. I rescheduled Naomi's surgery for 2 weeks out. It was the earliest Landon could fit us in. 2 more weeks of worry, 2 more weeks of Naomi's heart struggling, but it was a date, a new target. I left the hospital feeling hollowed out, but strangely clear-headed. The moment I walked into Esme's house, I saw Naomi sitting on the living room floor, colouring in a book. She looked up, her bright eyes innocent. "Mommy," she chirped, "is the special day on hold?" "Grandma said we're not going to the hospital anymore." My heart twisted. Esme had already poisoned the well. I knelt beside Naomi, forcing a smile. "No, sweetie, it's not on hold. Grandma just got a little confused. We had to move it back a little, but it's still happening. It's just going to be a super-duper special day now because we get to wait a little longer." She seemed to accept that. Naomi was a trusting soul, too trusting sometimes, just like I used to be. That night, after Naomi was asleep, I got to work. I pulled out my laptop, the one I used for work, and started a new folder. I printed the call logs from my phone, showing all the times I'd called the hospital, all the times Esme hadn't. I saved the email from the hospital, the cancellation confirmation. I scrolled through Esme's social media, taking screenshots of her flaunting her new diamond earrings, her new designer handbag. I even snuck into her room and snapped a picture of the receipt for the earrings tucked into a jewellery box. This wasn't just about getting the money back, this was about exposing her, about making sure she could never do this to anyone again, especially not to Naomi. As I was going through my old desk drawers, looking for a spare USB drive, my fingers brushed against something, a small metal box. I remembered it. It was where I used to keep my important papers, old report cards, things like that. I opened it, and then I saw it, or rather, what wasn't there. Naomi's college bonds, the ones my grandmother had bought for her when she was born. Not much, maybe a few $1,000s, but it was Naomi's, and they were gone. Esme's betrayal went deeper than cash. It went deeper than my own future. It went all the way to my daughters. The missing college bonds were the final straw. It wasn't just about the money anymore, or even the surgery. This was about a pattern of calculated destruction, a lifetime of my mother chipping away at my independence, my finances, my very sense of self. And now Naomi was in her crosshairs. My first thought was to confront her, but the cold resolve that had settled in me after hearing that recording held me back. Confrontation was Esme's game. She thrived on it, twisting words, gaslighting, making you feel like you were the crazy one. No, I needed proof, irrefutable, undeniable proof. The next day, while Esme was out at her weekly bridge game, a sacred ritual she never missed, I installed a mini camera in my bedroom. It was tiny, barely noticeable, tucked away on a bookshelf, pointed at my desk and the general area where I kept my purse. I knew it was a long shot, but I needed to know if she was still trying to find things, if this was an ongoing hunt. It didn't take long. 2 days later, I came home from my cleaning job to find my purse on the floor beside my bed, its contents slightly dishevelled. I checked the camera footage. There she was, Esme, casually walking into my room, picking up my purse and rifling through it. Her face was impassive, her movements practiced. She wasn't looking for anything specific, just searching. For what, I didn't know. More money, more secrets? It didn't matter. I had her. The evidence dossier on my laptop, which I'd ironically titled Matricide metaphorically, was growing. Call logs, screenshots of Esme's new expensive items, the recording of her call to Landon, The video of her rummaging through my purse. It was all there, neatly organised, ready for presentation. But I needed more. I needed an ally, someone who understood Esme's particular brand of poison, someone who had lived through it. I called Jessica, my older sister. She was 36, 3 years my senior, and we hadn't spoken in years. Not properly, anyway. After our father died, Jessica had sided with Esme, convinced by her lies that I was the difficult one, the ungrateful one. Esme had always been good at turning us against each other. "Jessica," I said when she finally answered, her voice wary. "It's Robin." There was a long silence. "Robin? Wow, to what do I owe the unexpected pleasure?" Her tone was laced with a bitterness I remembered all too well. "It's about Mom," I said, cutting straight to it, "and it's about Naomi." That got her attention. "Naomi, is she okay?" "No," I said, my voice cracking slightly. "She's not. Her heart condition is worse. She needs surgery, an experimental one, and Mum stole the money I saved for it, all of it, and then she called the hospital and cancelled the surgery, pretending to be me." Another silence, heavier this time. Then Jessica's voice, sharp with disbelief. "What? No. She wouldn't do that. She's just trying to help you, Robin. You're always so dramatic." The familiar words, the familiar dismissal. It was like listening to Esme herself. "She called Naomi attention-seeking, Jessica, to Landon Fowler, the surgeon. She said I was incompetent and that Naomi didn't need the surgery." I could hear her breathing, ragged on the other end. "Landon Fowler? You're still in touch with him?" "That's not the point," I snapped, my patience wearing thin. "The point is, she stole $85,000 from under my floorboards, and she stole Naomi's college bonds, the ones Grandma left her. She's trying to kill my daughter, Jessica, because she can't stand me being independent." The dam broke. Jessica started to cry, soft, choked sobs. "Oh my God, Robin, the bonds. She told me you cashed them out years ago. That you were irresponsible." "She lies, Jessica. She always lies." "She took Dad's will," Jessica blurted out, her voice raw. "After he died, she said she was organising his affairs. But then she told me he'd changed it, that he'd left everything to her and just a small amount to us. She said he didn't trust us with money. I believed her." My breath hitched. My father, a kind, quiet man, had always been a buffer between us and Esme's manipulations. He'd always seemed to protect me, even from a distance. The thought that Esme had tampered with his will, too, was a fresh wound. It explained so much. My inheritance had been practically nothing, barely enough to cover the funeral costs. I'd always just assumed he'd been tight with money, or that I wasn't worth much to him. Another lie, another control tactic. "She changed it," I whispered, the pieces clicking into place. "She changed our inheritance." "She's been doing this our whole lives, hasn't she?" Jessica was still crying. "Yes, oh God, yes, she forced me to give up my baby, Robin, when I was 16. She said it was for my own good, that I was too young, that it would ruin my life. She said she'd disown me if I didn't. She even forged my signature on some papers." My world tilted. Jessica had been pregnant at 16, and Esme had forced her to give up her child. My sister had been carrying this secret, this trauma, for 2 decades. It was a dark, chilling echo of my own experience with the college scholarship. Esme's web of control and manipulation was far wider, far deeper than I'd ever imagined. "Jessica," I said, my voice steady now, cold. "I need your help. I'm going to make sure she never hurts anyone again, especially not Naomi." She sniffled. "What do you need?" "Just tell me everything, everything you know, everything she's done. And don't tell her we spoke." The next few days were a blur of intense preparation. Jessica sent me old emails, vague text messages, anything she could find that hinted at Esme's machinations. I added it all to my matricide, metaphorically, folder. The evidence was mounting, a mountain of betrayal. I was at my cleaning job, scrubbing a particularly stubborn stain off a bathroom floor, when my phone buzzed. It was Landon. "Robin, you need to get down to the hospital." "Now!" His voice was tight with urgency. "Your mother, she's here, in person, trying to cancel Naomi's surgery again." My blood ran cold. She wasn't just trying to steal money anymore. She was actively trying to prevent the surgery, even after I'd rescheduled it. This was an obsession, a sickness. "Security alerted us," Landon continued, "because of the previous call. She's in the waiting area, causing a scene. She's telling everyone Naomi doesn't need the surgery, that you're an unfit mother. I think she's trying to get CPS involved." A new kind of fear, cold and sharp, pierced through the rage. CPS, Child Protective Services. If Esme managed to convince them I was unfit, they could take Naomi. That was her endgame. Not just to control me, but to take my daughter. "I'm on my way," I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. But inside, a new, terrifying plan was forming. A plan that would expose Esme once and for all. The drive to the hospital felt like an eternity. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. Esme was trying to get CPS involved. That was the real threat. Not just the money, not just the surgery, but Naomi herself. She wanted to take my daughter. When I arrived, Landon met me in the lobby, his face grim. "She's gone," he said, nodding towards the exit. Security escorted her out. She was yelling about child endangerment and negligent mothers. Said she was going to call social services. My jaw tightened. "She already did," I said, my voice flat. "She told Naomi the surgery was on hold. She's been poisoning her, and she stole Naomi's college bonds." Landon's eyes widened. "The bonds, Robin, that's a whole other level." "I know," I said, "and I'm done. Done playing nice, done letting her get away with it." We walked to his office. I pulled out my laptop and opened the matricide metaphorically based folder. "I need to file a formal fraud complaint," I said, showing him the recording of Esme's call, the video of her rummaging through my purse, the screenshots of her new jewellery. "And I need to do it through the hospital. This isn't just about my money. This is about her impersonating me to cancel a life-saving surgery for a minor. That has to be a crime, right?" Landon nodded, his expression hardening as he reviewed the evidence. "Fraud, identity theft, medical interference. This is serious, Robin. Our legal team will take this very seriously, especially with the recording and the security footage of her trying to cancel it in person." He picked up his phone. "I'll get them on the line now. They'll start a quiet internal investigation. We want to build an airtight case." While Landon was on the phone, I started my own long con. I went home and acted as if nothing had happened. I cooked Esme's favourite meal, pot roast with all the trimmings. I asked her about her bridge game, feigned interest in her new earrings, even complimented her on her good taste. It was sickening, but I needed her guard down. I needed her to feel safe, complacent. Esme, ever the narcissist, ate it up. She preened under my attention, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the surface. She started complaining about her financial woes, hinting that she'd had to make some adjustments to her own budget. I just nodded sympathetically, offering vague platitudes, but I noticed things, small tells. She started counting her wine bottles in the pantry, as if checking her inventory. She'd thumb through the mail nervously, especially anything official-looking. She was clearly worried about the money she'd stolen, about the paper trail. Good, let her sweat. A few days later, I made another call. This one, I knew, was a gamble, but it was a necessary step. I called Child Protective Services. "Yes, hello," I said, adopting a slightly shaky voice. "My name is Robin Hoffman. I'm calling with some concerns about a minor, Naomi Hoffman, my daughter. Her grandmother, Esme Hoffman, has been exhibiting some strange behaviour." She's been interfering with Naomi's medical care, trying to cancel necessary surgeries, and making some rather alarming statements about my ability to care for Naomi. I'm concerned about her mental stability around my daughter. I kept it vague, just enough to trigger an inquiry, but not so much that it sounded like a personal vendetta. I knew they'd have to investigate, and when they did, I'd be ready. The CPS representative took down my information, assuring me they would look into it. I hung up, a cold knot of dread and satisfaction in my stomach. I hated involving CPS, hated the thought of any official scrutiny on Naomi, but Esme had forced my hand. She had escalated this, not me. The next morning, I was checking my mail, something I rarely did since most of my bills were electronic. Tucked between a grocery store flyer and a credit card offer was a plain white envelope. No return address, just a standard government-looking stamp. I tore it open. Inside was a formal notice of inquiry from the IRS. My blood ran cold. Esme. She hadn't just taken the cash. She had tried to file my tax returns, to get ahead of the money loss, as she'd probably put it. To make it look like I was the one with undeclared income, the one committing fraud. She was trying to frame me, to bury me under a mountain of legal trouble while she walked away clean. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about survival. And I was going to fight fire with fire. The IRS notice was the final piece of the puzzle. Esme wasn't just trying to steal from me, she was trying to destroy me, frame me for tax fraud, get CPS to take Naomi, and leave me with nothing. But what she didn't know was that every one of her moves was just another piece of evidence for my own case. I immediately called Landon. She tried to file my taxes, I told him, my voice tight. To make it look like I was hiding income? Unbelievable, he muttered. Okay, Robin, this is good. It shows intent. We need to get all of this to Dominic West. Dominic West, the CPS investigator I'd called. He'd left a message on my phone the day before, saying he wanted to set up a meeting. Perfect timing. The meeting was set for the next afternoon at Landon's office at the hospital. It felt like a war room. Landon, me, and Dominic West, a man in his mid-40s with kind but intensely observant eyes. He listened patiently as I laid out everything. I started with the core of it: Naomi's heart condition, the experimental surgery, the $85,000 I'd saved. Then, the night I found the floorboard pried open. And then, I said, my voice steady, I found this. I played the recording of Esme's phone call to the hospital. Her voice, calm and dismissive, calling Naomi attention-seeking, calling me incompetent. Dominic's expression remained neutral, but I saw a flicker in his eyes. Next, I showed him the security footage Landon had pulled from the hospital. Esme, walking into the lobby, approaching the reception desk, her face a mask of false concern as she tried to cancel the surgery in person. Again. The timestamp matched the day Landon had called me, frantic. She then proceeded to tell hospital staff that I was an unfit mother and that Naomi didn't need the surgery, I explained, watching Dominic's reaction. Then came the financial evidence, screenshots of Esme's new diamond earrings, the designer handbag, the receipt for the earrings I'd found. These appeared immediately after the money went missing, I stated, my voice devoid of emotion. She even tried to file my tax returns, presumably to make it look like I was the one with undeclared income. I handed him the IRS notice. Finally, I pulled up the video from the mini camera in my room. Esme, casually rifling through my purse. She's been searching my things, looking for something. I don't know what, but it shows a pattern of invasion and theft. Dominic took notes, his pen scratching quietly on his pad. He looked at Landon. And you can corroborate the medical interference? Absolutely, Landon confirmed. We have her on record trying to cancel a life-saving procedure, and her statements about Miss Hoffman's competency and Naomi's condition were medically inaccurate and concerning. Dominic closed his notebook. Okay, Miss Hoffman, this is quite a lot. We'll be in touch. He paused, looking at me intently. I'd like to invite your mother to the hospital tomorrow for a clarification meeting. We'd like to hear her side of things regarding the medical interference. A tiny spark of triumph ignited in my chest. This was it. The trap was set. The next day, Esme arrived at the hospital, dressed impeccably, a picture of indignant innocence. She clearly thought this was her chance to finally expose me, to paint me as the unstable, irresponsible daughter. She was led into a conference room where Dominic West sat at the head of the table. Landon was there too, looking professional and unreadable. I sat quietly in a chair in the corner, a neutral expression on my face. Ms. Hoffman, Dominic began, his voice calm. Thank you for coming in. We're here to discuss some concerns regarding Naomi Hoffman's medical care. Esme immediately launched into her practiced monologue. Oh yes, my poor granddaughter. Robin is just so irresponsible, you see, so easily led. She thinks Naomi needs this radical surgery, but it's simply not true. I'm just trying to protect my grandchild from her mother's foolish decisions. Dominic nodded slowly. I see. And you called the hospital previously to cancel the surgery, correct? Yes, I did, Esme said, puffing out her chest. As her grandmother, I have a right to intervene when my daughter is clearly making poor choices. And you stated that Robin Hoffman was incompetent and that Naomi was attention-seeking? Esme waved a dismissive hand. Well, she is, isn't she? Always has been. Just like her father. Dominic pressed a button on a small recorder on the table. The room filled with Esme's voice, her exact words from the phone call to Landon, played back for her to hear. Esme's face went pale. Her eyes darted to me, then to Landon, then back to Dominic. The smugness evaporated, replaced by a flicker of panic. What is this? She stammered. You recorded me? Standard procedure for medical calls, Miss Hoffman, Landon interjected, his voice flat. For quality assurance. Dominic then pulled up the security footage of Esme at the hospital reception desk, trying to cancel the surgery in person. Her face, her gestures, her indignant posture, all there, undeniable. Esme's composure shattered, her face contorted with rage. This is a setup, she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at me. You manipulative little witch. You've been plotting against me, haven't you? This is emotional blackmail. You're trying to ruin my life. She stood up, knocking her chair over, her eyes wild. You're sick, Robin. You're just like your father, always trying to make me look bad. I'm the victim here. I'm the one who's always sacrificed everything. Dominic West watched her, his expression unreadable. He let her rant, let her expose herself completely. When she finally ran out of breath, panting, he spoke. Miss Hoffman, he said, his voice quiet but firm, we'll be in touch. And you might want to get a good lawyer. The 2 weeks leading up to Naomi's rescheduled surgery were a blur of nervous energy and quiet anticipation. Esme had been served with a temporary restraining order, keeping her away from me and Naomi. The silence in the house was deafening, a stark contrast to the constant hum of her manipulation. She was still living there, but confined to her room, occasionally venturing out only to glare at me, with a hatred so pure it almost felt like a physical force. Then the first shoe dropped. On a Tuesday morning, 2 days before Naomi's surgery, a process server arrived at the house. Esme was in the kitchen, nursing a cup of coffee, when the knock came. She opened the door, her usual air of superiority firmly in place. Esme Hoffman? The man asked, holding out a stack of papers. Her eyes widened as she took them. State documents, fraud investigation, financial seizure of Robin's assets, the money she'd stolen, the bonds, and the temporary restraining order, now officially filed. Her face went slack, the colour draining from it. She looked at me, standing in the doorway of the living room, a silent witness. Her eyes were no longer filled with hatred, but with a dawning horror. I said nothing, just watched. That afternoon, I posted the truth. Not on my personal page, not with my name, anonymously. On a local community forum, one that was widely read, I laid it all out: the daughter with the serious heart condition, the single mother working 3 jobs, the $85,000 saved under the floorboards, the theft, the cancelled surgery, the IRS notice. I included redacted receipts, screenshots of the new jewellery, the recording of Esme's call, and a link to the hospital's public statement about the security incident involving a disgruntled family member. I didn't name Esme directly, but I described her actions in such detail, and the context was so specific that anyone in our small town who knew her would know exactly who I was talking about. I called it a mother's betrayal. The story went viral. Within hours, the comments section exploded. People I didn't even know were sharing it, expressing outrage, disbelief. The community backlash was swift and brutal. Esme was a pillar of the community, known for her charity work, her perfectly manicured lawn, her air of genteel superiority. This post ripped that facade to shreds. The next morning, the day of Naomi's surgery, Jessica called me. Her voice was trembling. "Robin," she choked out, "I saw the post. Oh God, Robin." It's everywhere." "I know," I said, my voice calm. I needed people to know. "I'm going to tell them," she said, her voice gaining strength. "I'm going to tell them about my baby, about what she did to me. I can't let her get away with it anymore." And she did. Jessica posted her own story, publicly, on the same forum. She detailed how Esme had forced her to give up her child at 16, how she'd forged documents, how she'd threatened to disown her. She named Esme directly. The internet exploded again. The outrage intensified, a furious wave crashing down on my mother. Later that day, Naomi was wheeled into surgery. Landon was there, calm and reassuring. He squeezed my hand before they took her away. "She's going to be okay, Robin," he promised. "We've got this." I sat in the waiting room, a knot of anxiety twisting in my stomach, but also a strange sense of peace. The revenge was unfolding, but it felt secondary now. All that mattered was Naomi. Hours later, Landon emerged, his scrub stained, but a tired smile on his face. "It was a success, Robin," he said, his voice hoarse. "She's in recovery. It went perfectly." Relief, so profound it almost buckled my knees, washed over me. I hugged him tightly, tears streaming down my face. As I sat by Naomi's bedside, watching her sleep, a news alert popped up on my phone. Local news. Prominent local woman under investigation for identity theft and fraud. They didn't name Esme directly yet, but the details were unmistakable. The police had been contacted. CPS was involved. Later that evening, as the sun began to set, I saw it from Naomi's hospital room window, my mother's house. A small crowd had gathered on the sidewalk. Neighbours, reporters, a few flashing lights. My phone buzzed again. It was April, my best friend from work. "Girl, you won't believe it," she whispered, her voice buzzing with excitement. "I just saw your mum. Some neighbour, old Mrs. Henderson, walked right up to her on her front lawn and said, 'Your pride cost you everything, Esme, even your blood.' Then the cops showed up, and CPS, and the media is swarming her house." I looked out the window again. Esme was standing alone on her front lawn, her perfect hair dishevelled, her face a mask of shock and despair. The crowd watched her, silent, unforgiving. The flashing lights of police cruisers and news vans bathed her in a harsh, cold glow. I watched for a long moment, then turned away from the window. The revenge was complete. I had exposed her. I had taken everything from her, just as she had tried to take everything from me. I walked past her house later that night, on my way back to the hospital. The scene was still there, though the crowd had thinned. Esme was being led into a police car, her head bowed. She didn't look up. I walked past, silent, a ghost in the night. It's been a few weeks since the surgery. Naomi is recovering well. Her colour is better, her energy slowly returning. She's still got a long road ahead, but the doctors are optimistic. The experimental procedure worked. My daughter is going to live. We're in our new apartment now, a small 2-bedroom place on the other side of town. It's nothing fancy, but it's ours. No faded floral wallpaper, no loose floorboards, just clean walls and the quiet hum of the refrigerator. The air here feels lighter, cleaner, free of the toxic residue of Esme's presence. Esme. She's lost everything. The fraud investigation, the identity theft charges, the public outcry from the forum posts. It all hit her like a tidal wave. She ended up taking a plea deal. No jail time, which stung a little, but it was a non-negotiable condition to avoid a lengthy public trial that would have dragged Naomi into the spotlight. The terms of the deal were harsh enough: restitution for the stolen money and bonds, a permanent restraining order keeping her away from me and Naomi, and a significant fine. She had to sell the house to cover it all. She lost her friends too: the bridge club, the charity committees, the neighbourhood gossip circle. They all abandoned her. Her carefully constructed image, the one she'd spent 62 years perfecting, shattered into a million pieces. The last I heard, she's living in a small rented room on the outskirts of town, a ghost of her former self. She lost her home, her dignity, and both her daughters. Jessica and I are talking, cautiously. The shared trauma of Esme's betrayal has forged a strange, fragile bond between us. We meet for coffee sometimes, or talk on the phone after Naomi is asleep. She's started therapy, finally confronting the pain of losing her child all those years ago. There are still decades of hurt and resentment between us, but for the first time, we're on the same side. We're both survivors of the same war. It's not easy, and it won't be a quick fix, but there's a flicker of hope there. Landon comes by sometimes, usually with a takeout coffee for me and a new book for Naomi. He sits with me in the evenings, after Naomi is asleep, and we just talk. About the hospital, about the future, about nothing at all. He's been my rock through all of this, a steady presence in the storm. There's a quiet understanding between us, a chemistry that's always been there, simmering beneath the surface. Maybe, eventually, something more. But for now, just his friendship is enough. I look at Naomi, sleeping peacefully in her bed, her chest rising and falling with a steady rhythm I'd once feared I'd never hear again. She's safe, she's healthy. I won. But the victory doesn't taste as sweet as I thought it would. The revenge, the methodical dismantling of my mother's life, it tasted like justice. Yes, it felt righteous, but it didn't fill the hollow ache in my chest. It didn't erase the years of emotional abuse, the constant need to prove myself, the deep-seated fear that I was always incompetent, always attention-seeking. I cut her out. I exposed her. I ensured she could never hurt me or Naomi again. And in doing so, I severed the last toxic thread connecting me to the woman who gave me life. It was necessary, it was brutal, and it left a gaping wound where my identity used to be, tied up in the endless struggle against her. Now, I have to figure out who I am without that fight, who Robin is, not as Esme's daughter, but as Naomi's mother, as just Robin. It's a terrifying, exhilarating prospect. I didn't bury my mother. I simply stepped over the grave she dug herself.